Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Live Charting, the show where you pick the tickers and we do the charting. My name is Jason Kretzky. I will be your host this evening. This show is presented by TrendSpider, and we are super stoked tonight to be joined by the one and only Mr. Theta Warrior. Theta, my friend, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing excellent. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here too. Let's just jump right into this thing. I know I've been following your feed. You've been talking about this whale that has been buying these puts and then keeps on buying the lower orders. What are your thoughts here on SPY before we get into the request side? Just want to get your 2 cents on kind of the overall market.
Sure, of course. So yes, I have been tracking the whale, and it's a fun thing to do. I enjoy it, and it's also interesting because we kind of get a glimpse into the sentiment, the positioning of this obviously big trader. My thinking of the SPY, basically, after we took out the lows that we put in on May 20th, I kind of think that really opens the door for a lot lower prices potentially. We had an opportunity to rally. We kind of formed this little, bullish rectangle, bull flag, whatever you want to call it, and we just completely failed to push higher out of it, and were rejected, and we sold off really quickly. So, my thinking was maybe we'll get a little relief bounce here just because we came down so fast, but we didn't end up getting that, and we actually took out the lows and continued lower today after we, heard from the Fed yesterday. So I think that obviously the trend is down, right? We're in a bear market. We can expect prices to continue moving lower, most likely. And, you just have to take it one day at a time.
Right. Yeah. Do you have kind of like a lower target, something where we might see some kind of bounce?
Yeah, so it actually makes a lot of sense in my mind if I zoom out and I look at the weekly. So this is a Fibonacci pulled from the March 2020 low to our current all-time high. And, we got a little bit of a bounce off this 0.382 extension, but failed to obviously push higher. And we've now sold off below it. So the next levels I'm looking at below would be the 50% retracement, right, from the low to the high. Is not a Fibonacci number, but it isn't often in a place that stocks will find support. And you'll also notice that it lines up really nicely with this 200-week SMA, which we cut through it in March of 2020, but we have bounced off it multiple times in the past. Let me zoom out a little. We touched it here, we touched it right there, almost to the penny. So we're coming up to that. That may be a potential area. Kind of lines up with this, prior high as well, somewhere in here. 350, a nice solid kind of roundish number. And then of course, if we lose that, I think the real downside target would be the 0.618, which is the really important Fibonacci number. So I think we've got a couple, potential areas of support below here.
Got it, man. That's ugly. All right.
It is ugly.
Before we get into the requests here, for anybody who is joining us for the first time, the way that this is going to work, you can vote for 3 tickers per round. 1 round is 1 symbol. So we're going to get probably through about 20 rounds tonight. If we don't get to your name in the first round, pick it again. You can pick 3 unique names. You cannot pick the same name 3 times. So that's the rules. And we're going to go ahead and jump into this thing. And the first ticker that we have is Amazon.
Amazon, excellent.
Yep.
A ticker that I watch very closely, and something that has been on a lot of people's minds, I think, ever since the split. So now we've got Amazon in the $100 range. Right, pretty amazing. And this is the 200-week, which you can see it failed to push above. We kind of came back down to this prior breakout level, going all the way back to 2018. It's been a resistance level. Finally we pushed through, unable to really push higher, kind of consolidated for multiple years basically. And we've now come back down to revisit that low. So and also it lines up now with that, kind of psychological new $100 level. So I think that this is a good make or break spot for Amazon. You can see that, we're kind of trading just right along those recent lows. If we can't get a bounce here, I'm sure that we will see, further downside, maybe the 90, 85 range. Kind of think of it similar to like AMD. When it's unable to hold that $100 price level, it tends to revisit the 90, 88, 85 kind of range. So right now,
Right.
I think it's actually at a pretty interesting spot.
Yeah. So, any idea target wise, if this area fails, anything you're looking for?
I would probably zoom out and go back to like prior areas where it has bounced, which
Yeah.
obviously this was an area 81. I'd probably start a little bit higher though, and say probably pull something right into that range, because you can kind of see we held that, right?
Right.
This was obviously the big sell-off in March, so things kind of overshot to the downside. But this 85 range has proven to be a support level, a demand level in the past. So I'd probably look for some support in that range. And then, maybe just line up some other spots, like kind of right in there, 79, 80 or so. But we'll see. I mean, this thing came down from the high so quickly, and it had a nice bounce there leading
Right.
up into the split. And then it, eventually, of course, just gave it all back with the negative, selling that we've been seeing in the market overall.
This feels like a type of name that people would want to be looking for like super long holds on, right? Like where would you feel comfortable grabbing Amazon and like really letting it ride for a while?
Sure. So full disclosure, I do own Amazon. I've owned Amazon for a long time. I do think it's a great company to own for the long term. I told myself I was going to buy some more if it got down to 100. Here we are. Of course, it's really hard to buy when it's the
Yep.
best time to buy,
Yep.
so I haven't pulled the trigger yet on picking up any more this week, just because I really truly do believe that we probably will see lower prices throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
And I've got dry powder ready to go, and I don't want to get too over enthusiastic and spend it all right at once.
Yeah.
I think you definitely want to average in over time, dollar cost average. So, I think 100 is probably not a terrible price. Maybe you buy a little more if it gets down to 90, you buy some more if it gets down to 85, 80. That's kind of how I approach it, as
Okay.
put a little bit of money to work in increments.
Got it. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next round here. And the next round is the Qs.
QQQ, perfect.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's always good to start with the SPY
Yeah.
and the Qs, get a good idea of things. So
Absolutely.
this is a really important trend line going all the way back to 2015. This is a weekly chart of the QQQ. And you can see that it's riding around it really well, bouncing each time it comes in touch with it. And then we just got really extended, since the COVID lows, really too far, too fast. So the market's kind of correcting for that move. And we've just gotten so far above that trend line that we're starting to retrace and come back to it again. You'll also notice, again, this is that 200-week SMA. So that, again, is going to be an interesting spot to potentially look for support. Let me zoom in a little bit more here so we can see it. But of course, if that doesn't hold, and we see things really get nasty, we could be looking at meeting up again with this trend line. As time goes on, this trend line is going to get higher and higher. And obviously this is probably going to take a little bit of time to get down there, I would expect. So, maybe that's 240 or so, kind of matches up with that prior high as well. I think that would be an interesting spot to look if the 200-week SMA cannot hold. Obviously the market wants to go lower. I think it's wise to not get in its way and,
Right.
try and capitalize to the downside as much as you can. So I think that there are going to be some really great buying opportunities in a lot of different names, and an opportunity to, really create some wealth over time. But I don't think that we're quite there yet. Does it hurt to nibble? Probably not. But I think that if you're patient, we'll really see some nice prices here shortly.
Yeah, right on. And what would get you kind of more bulled up in this particular case? What would you need to see on the Qs?
I remember last time we were chatting, you asked me a similar question, kind of
Yeah.
when we've lost this trend line right up here.
Yeah.
And we kind of formed that little wedge and we kind of broke higher from it. I think that the trend is clearly down, and there's a lot of warning signs, I think, with the economy, possibly growth is shrinking, right? Inflation not helping anything. So I think that a lot of things would need to change, and of course need to see price respond to it, right? I mean, price is going to bottom long before the economy does. So
Right.
we'll see the market start to move higher when we're starting to get out of the negative economy sentiment. So that we're not seeing that right now. So the market is saying that likely things are going to get worse before they get better. So I think you just got to pay attention, listen to the cues, and yeah, just take it each day at a time.
Right on. All right, let's keep on moving. Next round, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Oh,
Ooh,
very
yeah,
good.
she's at a beautiful spot this evening.
Yeah, what an incredible sell-off we have seen in Bitcoin this week. It's been phenomenal. A lot of money to be made to the downside. So, 20,000, that's like the big level that everyone's been looking at, right? And you can kind of see, maybe we had a little head and shoulders here. Debatable, because this is kind of a lower shoulder. It's kind of, should be kind of spaced in that range. Certainly not textbook, but what we can see is that trend has been failing consistently over and over, right? If this bull trend was going to continue, it needed to bounce right there, right, to put in a higher low. And it didn't. It fell, and it formed another little trend line, which it lost again. Then it formed another little trend line, ascending triangle or a bear pennant, however you want to classify this little consolidation that we've now moved lower from here. So again, the trend is moving lower. I know I hear a lot of people calling for Bitcoin 17,000, some people saying 10,000, some people saying 0. So who knows what we'll see. Certainly the crypto market has been extremely volatile, and there are ways to play crypto to the downside, and that's kind of how I've been approaching it. Personally, have not been buying anything for the long-term portfolio yet, just simply because of this super bearish negative selling that seems to come each time this trend line is broken. So wrapping it up in Bitcoin, obviously we're going to get some sort of consolidation here. Usually if there's buyers that step in, they step in really quickly with crypto, right? It'll be down 20% one day and they'll be up 40% the next day from that low. So we're not seeing that. Prices hovering near the lows. So likely we'll probably see another consolidation, and I think you're just going to want to take the trade in whichever direction it chooses. If this had broken up to the upside, I think then the bull case can be made, but we saw the opposite happen here.
Targets lower. I know we threw a bunch of numbers around, but what do you actually think?
So right now, full disclosure, we still have our short that's open in Bitcoin. We've been trimming and taking profits, but we still have a short position. I would likely expect this to consolidate before it takes another knife down. That's kind of been the trend. It'll take a knife, consolidate, knife, consolidate. So I would probably expect this to do the same somewhere in this range. Obviously there's going to be some psychological support at 20,000. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it just keeps going lower. We'll have to see what happens.
No big lower targets from you.
Looking at the chart, I think that this kind of range where it broke out from is interesting. I mean, that's 19.5. So that's right where we're at now. I mean, if this thing takes that out and we lose 19.5, I mean, we're going back to, prior, resistance type of levels, which, I mean, looking at that right there, that's anywhere from 12 to 13,000.
Yep.
So it could get pretty ugly.
Yep. That's kind of where my head's at on it. I guess we'll see as it goes. All right. Next round is Ethereum.
Ethereum. Okay, perfect. Can't talk about Bitcoin without talking about Ethereum.
Right.
So Ethereum, to me, just right off the bat, looks like a big head and shoulders. One of my tricks I like to do is just remove all the color so you can just get, the classic profile of the actual chart. And if you've ever read any of the old trading books, this is how they always look at charts. It's always like a colorless bar chart. And I think it's because the old school technicians used to do what I just said. They used to just focus on the pattern instead of red, green, red, green. You want to look at the pattern as a whole. So clearly we've got a head and shoulders here. Yeah, it's taken out the neckline, kind of in that range. We're moving below the 200-week SMA. If you zoom out, it kind of looks reminiscent of this action right here. So maybe, what we're seeing now is just going to be another blip on the radar in the next, 5 years, however long this took, 2018 to 2020, 2 years or so. since it made its low. So maybe we have, another couple years for this to trade sideways, if not lower in the meantime, before we get another bull run, if we do get one at all. So I kind of feel very similar way that I do with Bitcoin. I think that, trend is continuing to push lower. You've got some very similar, whoops, looks like that's black. You've got some very similar trend line breaks, right, that are coming up around the same time. Bitcoin and Ethereum often move in tandem of one another. So again, maybe we'll see a little consolidation here before we continue lower, but right now the trend is definitely lower.
One thing we haven't talked about at all is you've got MACD on your chart. How are you using MACD? Are there any other indicators that you like to use? Just maybe a little bit of background on kind of the indicators that you're using.
Yeah, of course. So I look at MACD just because it's like a simplified way to look at the moving averages. And you can, of course, see that it's moving lower. You've got a lower high. The classic MACD short signal is when you got the crossover of the signal line, which that matches up, really nicely. When it took out this low, you got a MACD cross. So that's your short signal right there all day long. Really nice trade there. The other one I'll look at is, of course, the 200, both on the daily and the weekly. That's kind of like my longer term analysis moving average, because it gives you a better long-term perspective, I think. I'll also toggle on the 50, and then the lowest I'll go is the 8, and then the 21 above that. But to me, that's just way too much going on in the chart, and it kind of hides the candles from me. So usually I'll kind of integrate them as need be. So like, really quickly, like we can look and see, they're just easy for spotting the trend. As soon as this is the 8 SMA on the blue here, and the purple is the 21. So as soon as that 21 got crossed over by the 8, it has been unable to reclaim that whole time. So technically, really, that's where you would get short if you're shorting an 8 over 21 crossover, and you're in this trade the whole time. You can see, look how nicely Ethereum has failed to reclaim that 21 SMA multiple times. So it's amazing. If you're a trend follower, you're short from here and you're still short because it's not above that 21 yet.
Right. Wow, man, that is one way to do it, ain't it? All right, let's keep on moving here. It looks like next round is the Qs, but we've already done the Qs, so we're going to skip it and we're going to go to AMD.
Nice. AMD, another one of my favorite tickers to trade. Okay, so let's see here. Some of my old lines from old past analysis, but you can see this blue zone here is kind of that 100 level, which we, that was the big, psychological 100 level that we took forever to get over. I remember trading this thing forever at 90, 99, thinking, my God, is it ever going to finally get over this thing? And finally it did. Beautiful breakout. And then we pulled back and formed a little, triangle, and we ripped higher. And then we've come back to test it multiple times. Looked like maybe we were going to get a little breakout, and they denied it. They completely failed it, and it was unable to hold. So now that we're below 100, I mean, that really opens up the door, to past lows, past consolidation ranges. You can see we've kind of risen in somewhat of a bear flag or a rising wedge. It actually is a lot more visible, I think, if you look at the weekly chart.
Super clean, huh?
Yeah, super clean. You had that nice rising trend line. It failed. It came down below it, chopped around a little bit, and then now we've continued lower. This yellow line I drew in like a few weeks ago because I was thinking maybe this would be the case. And sure enough, we have broken lower. So again, now that AMD is below 100, it's trading 81, just above 80 now. So I think that what I would personally do is look to see if we get kind of a bounce where we did in the past. So this was a prior demand zone. We'd be looking at that. Again, I'm going to throw on the 200 week. 200 week is not too far below. So I think, maybe 73, 74, maybe down to 67 and change or so. That might be an interesting spot. If things really, really get ugly, this was the real prior breakout level, this little ascending triangle here that it broke out from. So this could definitely be another range, 58. It's crazy to think that this thing could fall from 165, 164 all the way to 58, but that's a bear market for you. So I think if you're a long-term AMD bull like myself, these are interesting areas to look to possibly pick up shares, in the right market environment,
Right.
or at least, this is where you would look to take profits on a short position, most likely.
So it's tested that, I guess that's about $70 or so. It's tested that level, what, 1, 2, 4, almost 5 times now.
Mhm.
Does the amount of tests concern you? Like after a certain number of tests, you almost kind of figure that that level should fail because it's
Right.
just tested it so many times.
Right, right. Of course, that's the classic thinking. You're absolutely right. And I think that likely the first touch will at least see some sort of relief buying if it gets down there, which it
Right.
doesn't seem like too far of a stretch of the mind that it would come down another, 6, 8 points or so.
For
Um,
sure.
I would expect some little bounce, but yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's tested it so many times, failed to really, hold it above that 100 level. I think that it could definitely move down below it.
Any particular reason why you use the SMA over an EMA or any other kind of moving average?
Yes, I'm very glad you asked that because I get asked that all the time.
Cool.
I prefer the SMA, because it's what I learned how to trade with, and B, really the reason is because the SMA will give equal weighting to all past candles and all present candles, whereas the EMA will give a higher weighting to the more recent candles. So basically, your candles back here are not accounted for the same amount as they are here when you're using an EMA. So in my thinking, these past candles matter. These past consolidations are important. So I want to give them equal weighting in my analysis, just as much as these candles are important. So the SMA is a smooth blended moving average of all candles in any time.
Right on. And how are you trading right now? Are you generally kind of day trading in and out, or are you trying? Are you? I guess you're probably swing trading at least your Bitcoin position.
Right.
What's your standard practice?
So yes, basically this year I've transitioned to be, 90, 85% day trades,
Yeah.
just because it's such a choppy environment and you can be down one day and up the next. So I'd just rather be cash by the close. Last week, I think I had one swing. It was Apple puts, or maybe that was the week prior. This week it's just been day trades for me personally.
Yeah.
So I think that you really got to trade the environment that you're comfortable with. I know that not everyone can be a day trader, and I know it's not for everyone, and that's fine. I think that if you're, you can't, if you want to swing, I think that, buying yourself some time, giving yourself some room. One thing that I've been doing personally is sizing down on my position so I can kind of give myself a little bit wider stop. I still have the same risk profile, but basically, it just kind of prevents me from getting, stopped out prematurely, in this kind of choppy environment.
Yeah.
So that's a couple things I've been doing to kind of counteract it.
Sure. Right on. Well, if you guys are just tuning in, we are hanging out with Theta Warrior. If you are already TrendSpider customers, we thank you very much for that. If you're not a TrendSpider customer, we've got an awesome coupon, 35% off for 2 full years. You can grab that coupon in the chat. Sadie will hook you up. So if anybody's interested, it is there for you. Let's keep on moving on to the next round here. And it is BA. I was looking at BA today. I tried to play it long and I just couldn't, or I tried to play it short rather, and I couldn't hang.
Crazy move the last couple days.
Yeah. What's the deal? I don't even know. Did they have some news or something? Or is this just
You know,
like a technical, we took out the lows and now it's bouncing?
you know what? I should know the answer to that, and I don't.
Okay.
I haven't traded BA this week. I just know it had a killer move
Yeah.
yesterday. I saw a couple trader friends of mine catch it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that BA is another classic downtrend. It got a big move off the lows. Maybe it is news related. Maybe someone in the chat knows. Maybe it's just a short covering rally. Maybe it's just bouncing, prematurely above the 100 level.
Yep.
But I think that, can't really get too excited yet. I mean,
No.
just a quick glance, to me, this looks like a little, potentially, bearish rectangle that we have forming here. Of course, that gets negated the second it is able to push above that level. But for now, that's kind of just, in the timeout zone, I like to call it, in the chop zone,
Yeah.
where price is kind of trying to decide if it's actually going to bottom or not. So I think if you trade the range, there's definitely a trade there, but I certainly wouldn't be a buyer yet. And then again, also I wouldn't really be much of a seller either, because this could move higher out of this consolidation.
Right. Yeah. And it's important to know kind of your limits, like when you will and won't get out of a trade.
Yes, of course, absolutely. You got to know that before you get in.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. All right. We're going to keep on moving here. BA is kind of a hangout and wait. We're going to go to BSM, Blackstone Materials. I've never even heard of this.
I haven't either. It's my first time looking at this chart, so we'll do it together. Okay, so obviously a big move down today. I don't know what happened there. That's got to be news related.
Maybe
or
earnings.
something. Could be. Definitely could be earnings. Let's see here. Zoom out to the weekly. Oh, we're on the weekly. Oh, so let's see. So it's been selling off this whole week then. Sorry, I thought we were on the daily chart. Yeah, that's a nasty sell-off.
Coming into a spot, I mean, it's right there, right? Like it must hold. It really's got to hold kind of where it's at if it's going to keep going.
Oh, of course. I mean, look at the rip though. This thing had off the lows from $4 to 17, and it kind of came up into this prior chop range.
Right.
If I'm long this position, look how well it failed right there at that 200, pulled back. It's amazing.
Yep.
Eventually pushed higher. If I'm long in this thing, of course, I need to be thinking about potentially taking profits in an area where it's failed so many times. So people ask me, and I'm sure maybe the voters are wondering as well, where could this go to? So the quick way that I'll do it is I'll just connect the low to the high with the fibs, and I'll say, okay, well, the first real Fibonacci number is that 0.382 extension, and you've got your 200 SMA that's kind of in that similar range. And then also you can look and see right there at that spot that it failed right here is also a potential area for a bounce. Definitely. So to me, and not to get too many lines on the chart, to me that looks like a broadening formation. Some people will call it a megaphone. I've called it that before. Kind of sloppy drawing there, but you get the idea what I'm trying to show. Yeah. Price is expanding, and usually that's a topping signal, I think, when it kind of shows up in that range. So certainly this does look like it wants to go lower. I mean, if you look at it this week, it seems pretty obvious. So I think as far as like targets below, 1275, 1227, maybe $12 even, I think that would kind of be a good target for the short range.
Right. But you got a year. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know anything about this company, what sector they're in, or maybe it's energy and that's why it's selling off. But
yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe the chat will tell us. I mean, you got years of consolidation there in that $19 range. That it's going to take some time. If you have a bunch of buyers that are stuck up there that just now finally getting back to break even, it could take a little bit of time. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. All these people have been waiting, hoping, to God that this thing is going to come back so they can sell for break even. And you're actually right. That's probably just what happened.
All right. We are going to keep on moving here. Next round, WWE. Is this wrestling?
Gotta be. Worldwide Wrestling.
Oh, nice.
There we go. Okay. I truthfully have not looked at this chart in a long time. Let's see here. So we've got a big double top that formed. Big knife lower as it took out that neckline, moved below the 200 SMA. Really, it's just hugging that 200 SMA. You can see it's just bouncing around it. So let's see. So to me, that looks like a big, potentially ascending triangle on the weekly chart, kind of right around that range.
Yep.
Where it, failed before. Right? So it failed below there, came back, retested it, came back, retested it, came back, retested it again. So I think that, I mean, it's sloppy, but probably this is a big ascending triangle, and potentially going to be a breakout candidate one day. The way that I look at, ranges like this is resistance until proven otherwise. So I'm not going to be a buyer right here because you don't want to buy something right below resistance. So right now you have to factor in this being resistance and, potentially look for price to move lower here. But I think, it's not a bad looking chart.
just may take some time. And then once it gets up and over that level, I mean, are you a buyer once it gets up and over that level, or are you more of like sit back and let it come back to that level and see if it's going to hold?
So yes, so the latter. I mean, my favorite trade is like the BRB. And oh, that's not going to let me do that, is it? Let me do this.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm all
Yeah,
about this move right there.
right.
And it's got an arrow on it, of course. Let me put the arrow. There we go. So I love to see, resistance broken and then come back and prove to me that it's now support. And I'm a buyer right there all day long. That's like one of my go-to trades. Because if you buy it here, I mean, you run the risk of it just getting rejected. I mean, if you're going to be in and out really quickly, you could definitely do that. And I do trade that,
Right.
sometimes. But certainly this is the better signal, I think, the BRB.
I was listening to Chat with Traders earlier, just the most recent episode, and the gentleman that was the guest on the show said, like, historically, mathematically, breakouts work something like 12% of the time or something like that. It really
Wow.
doesn't pay to be much of a breakout trader generally.
Wow. That's an amazing stat.
That's a crazy stat, right?
Yeah. That's pretty low percentile.
Yeah. All right, let's keep on moving here.
Mhm.
DNN. We've got a minor.
Second
Denison.
minor. Second minor. Yeesh, man, that's a choppy chart. You
It's
know, again, I'm just gonna flip it right there, and pretty clear to me that looks like a Head and Shoulders. I mean, it's super choppy, and you've got a couple extra shoulders in there, but that to me definitely looks like Head and Shoulders. And you're right on that neckline too. Look at
kind of
that.
looks like ETH.
Kind of looks like ETH, yeah, except for ETH is like down here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Already took out the neckline there.
Right.
So again, I guess, okay, so this is a good example actually, because this is important. This is, okay, we both agree, looks like a Head and Shoulders. That's a bearish chart, right? But we also are trading right at near a support level. So, again, this goes back to what I was saying. You got to be careful shorting something right here, because this could very likely bounce and maybe form another one of these shoulder type of peaks or something, stop you out and then get its actual move. So I think the safer short is to wait until it moves below it. Maybe you get a BRB to the downside, a little retest of this range. um, you know this definitely maybe will hold the neckline. Certainly that's a possibility, but
Right.
looking at this chart, to me, I mean, look, you've got even MACD with kind of three nice peaks, all continually moving lower. This one, of course, took out this high, but this is certainly a lower high on the MACD. So to me, I don't know. It looks like that wants to keep going lower.
This is a penny stock. This is the first real penny stock that we've kind of discussed. Do you trade them? And if you do you trade them differently than you would trade, anything else?
You know what? I do not trade penny stocks, and I didn't even look at the price. That's amazing. But you're right. It is definitely a penny stock. Usually penny stocks are not chartable. So that's interesting. This one actually looks like a pretty legitimate technical pattern to me.
Right.
But no, I do not trade pennies.
Talk about why.
I just find that, they're usually, not saying always, but a lot of the time they move up. It's not for legitimate reasons. I think it's just because, too many market participants get involved at the same time, and it's just a bidding war that, causes the price to go up. I don't like the lack of liquidity. Obviously, you can't trade options on something like this. I know what I'm good at, and, this isn't really something that I'm interested in personally.
There you go. All right. We're gonna go to the opposite end of the spectrum here. We're going to Tesla.
Nice. Okay, good. Glad we got Tesla. Everyone loves talking about Tesla.
Of course.
So, yeah. So forgive all my lines here. We've got a bunch of stuff I've been looking at, trying to figure out, is this thing going to actually hold this trend line? Well, no, it didn't, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, it formed somewhat of a, falling wedge, and we got a huge rip out of it, but it wasn't able to take out the high, and we moved back below that trend line, up until, basically right here, February of 2022. This is a beautiful, trend line, symmetrical triangle, breakout, huge rip, great looking chart to trade. And then, things really get messy right here. In terms of like the weekly chart, it's debatable what's actually happening right here. But I think that, price certainly looks like it wants to keep moving lower, most likely, in my opinion. You know, we're in a downtrend. Again, this was that kind of nice falling wedge we broke out from, and then we immediately just gave it all right back. We're coming up to the lows. So a lot of stocks took out the lows this week, you know, Apple, Microsoft, AMD, but, you know, Tesla hasn't yet. So I think potentially this is an area to look for a bounce. We traded Tesla short today for a nice little chunk of change. That was a great trade. But, you know, now that it's right above support, you know, I exited my position because, of course, I'm always, you know, worried maybe we are going to get a bounce. But if it takes out that level, let's see, that recent swing low, 620.57, you know, I think the short game is in play. And, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to wrap it up. You know, I hate guessing, and, you know, this isn't a guess, it's just an observation. This is the monthly chart of Tesla. And to me, this looks like the potential for a, you know, a big head and shoulders. Again, totally a guess. I could absolutely be wrong, but you've got the makings of a potentially, you know, massive head and shoulders that will, of course, take, you know, another couple years to form if it's going to. And in the case that it is a head and shoulders, you know, you'd expect price to move lower and then bounce back up to that 900 range or so, and then continue lower again. So again, that's just pure speculation. I could definitely be wrong, but I guess what we can learn from this chart now is that, you know, this 550 to 500 range is probably going to be a longer term support range, that if we do continue to sell off, and you'll see we got that MACD bear cross right there, this may be an interesting spot to look for a bounce.
This is kind of unrelated, but not completely. What are your thoughts on OPEX tomorrow? How does it's quad witching? How does that? I don't know. What do you do in on those days?
It's the quad witch, man. I love quad witch Lotto Friday. They're always crazy.
Yeah.
You know, of course, we have to expect some volatility. Most of the volatility will likely come in the last half hour, if not the last 10 minutes. I think that there's going to be a lot of adjustments. I mean, right now in the flow, I'm seeing a ton of hedging, both in the SPY and the Qs. You know, today they're selling a lot of calls, writing calls. You know, that's extremely bearish behavior when they're writing calls. So I think that there's probably going to be a lot of rolling. You know, market makers are going to be scrambling to, you know, hedge their positions as this is taking place, and that's going to create a lot of volatility in the underlines. So I would expect probably, you know, a lot of movement in both directions as these positions are taken off and put on in later months. So yeah, we could definitely get some crazy moves tomorrow.
It's gonna be an exciting day. All right, let's keep on moving. Go ahead. Yeah.
I hate to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm just going to say, especially like with the market selling off the way it is and how volatile things are already. So,
and it's seeming like so many things are at pretty critical levels to, like, if they lose them, things could get sour. I mean, things are already sour, but things could get much more sour very quickly if some of these levels that have been acting as support start failing.
Absolutely.
We can even see it on that weekly on Tesla. There's a pretty decent area there, that kind of where it's trading around right now, eight, or where's it at? 600, or that whole area.
Absolutely. And Steve's still pretty extended above that 200 too.
Right. All right. We're going to go to the next round. We got Delta, DAL.
DAL.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking Dell Computers. Okay. Let's see here. So this is a name I don't particularly trade, not because I don't like it, but I just tend to favor tech personally. So you can see we've held above that 200 for a long time. Obviously, that was the big COVID crash when everyone thought no one was going to use planes anymore. And then we came back up and have failed to get above it, you know, so that's definitely very clear resistance currently. And we've got a big move lower this week, it looks like. I don't know if that's news related, earnings related or not. Man, that's a tough chart to trade.
Interesting to see BA performing better than something like Delta.
True. Well, they are in slightly different sectors, although they still deal with the same product. You know, right. Boeing can obviously sell planes to whoever. Maybe that's why it is, just a guess. But yeah, man, that's just a tough, choppy chart to trade, in my opinion. You know, and Boeing is the same case. I rarely trade Boeing these days because of that. So we're kind of coming up to that, low that we had in March. Maybe that's a head and shoulders there, kind of at the neckline. Again, just kind of gestating around that 200-day SMA. I think the trend is lower. If we get a bounce here, I wouldn't be a buyer unless it can hold above that 200. But yeah, it's
any where would you be looking for it to maybe find some support lower?
Like I said, this is kind of an interesting spot right where it's at, just because, well, maybe not. Looks like we're kind of starting to take it out already.
Yeah, kind of lost that low.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at a chart like this, we got such a big sell-off, my mind is thinking, okay, well, the shorts are going to cover, people are going to take profits on their puts, and you're going to get a relief bounce.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing that yet, and the same argument could be made about the market itself. We're not really seeing much of a relief bounce yet. Doesn't mean it's not coming. Maybe it won't come at all, but that's always my thinking. The easy short is right here and right here. Now that we're down here, I think you run that risk of potentially some type of bear market rally or relief bounce. And that applies to all tickers. So, big levels, I think, just looking at these lows, that's probably a big spot. Obviously, if it gets all the way back down to that COVID low as well, there's a couple little spots where it's bounced in the past, maybe offers some type of support. But yeah, I mean, basically what I'll do is just go back and look and see, well, where have buyers been active in the past? So these are all kind of areas where maybe you'd see some type of relief.
Got it. All right, cool. Let's keep moving. Next round is WEAT, WEAT.
The ETF, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Never looked at this chart.
Did it fail a new high? It did fail a new high.
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, you got a potential double top right there for sure.
Uh-huh.
So let's see. Okay. So we've got a breakout above this high right here. And you've got a nice rounded bottom that it broke out from. So that's your base, right? We got a huge rip higher. Obviously, that's got to be some type of economic reason that it did that. Don't know what it is. So what I would do then is take my Fibonacci, connect it to that level, and these would kind of be spots where I would be watching. Although, let's see, let me zoom in on the daily actually. So let's see, this was our breakout level. Kind of start it, say there. So it's really not paying too much respect to the fibs, although you could make the argument for that 0.382. The 50, I really wouldn't say it is too much. This is a tough one. I think that, again, you have that potential for a double top, but it also, to me, potentially looks like it might be a big pennant. Let me see if I can just clear this up. So if I connect that to that, and I do this, kind of got maybe a little pennant forming. Sure. So I don't know. I don't think it's bearish. I don't think it's bullish. I think it's consolidating. The real name for that, I would say, is actually more of a symmetrical triangle. Although you kind of need another touch. Really would need one more touch to call it. You kind of want at least 3. So for me, that's a no trade. I don't really see much there unless it took out that trend line. Maybe that's a short back down to here. And then I guess on the opposite side, if it holds here and starts moving up lower, kind of above this resistance level that it had before, maybe you could be a buyer above that. That might work.
You've got that MACD cross down too on the weekly there.
Very true. Very true.
Very tricky. So, and 3 weeks inside or 2 weeks inside, right? Like pretty much inside. So whatever it does out of this, it could be pretty powerful in either direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if it takes a little bit longer too, I mean, I like it when consolidations take their time and they really fill out a robust pattern, because I find that you get the real big moves that come out of that. Right. If this breaks down from here, it might sell off lower, but certainly if it spent another 6 months in this range and then broke lower, then you'd really expect a big sell off.
Yeah, for sure. That failed new high kind of freaks me out a little bit about wanting to go long on it. That's just me, but
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you did take it long above this current resistance level, I'd be a seller right there for sure.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Same. Okay. Cool. Let's keep moving. Neo. This is a nice mix of different symbols. I like this.
Yeah, totally. I'm looking at stuff that I don't usually look at, so
Right.
this is very cool. So Neo, the Tesla killer that is yet to be determined if it really is going to be the Tesla killer.
Right.
So this thing has had a heck of a sell-off from the high, 67, now below 20. This is obviously some prior lines that I had drawn. This, I think, is our current resistance level. I saw an opportunity of hope when this price was able to push above this. Potentially, you call that a falling wedge. It's kind of more of a falling channel that price is broken out of. And I drew this in there because this is a current gap. And what they say about gaps, all gaps get filled. Sometimes that's true, but then again, sometimes price will bounce just above it or maybe right on it, which shows the strength of that gap and proves that it is indeed support. So I don't think this is a terrible looking chart. I think if the market does bounce, you could definitely look for a move back up to the bottom side of that downtrend line. If the market does continue to sell off, I think this is also a great target. That psychological $10 level, 9 to 10, I think would be interesting. But I mean, clearly, this thing, has had a big sell off from the highs. It tried to hold this level multiple times and then failed, and we've just been, selling off ever since. So I know it didn't get picked up, but I'll just mention it quickly. I'm sorry, I'm breaking the rules here.
No, you're not.
XPEV, I think, is interesting because it is also starting to bounce, and it's also starting to consolidate just below a resistance level. So the only reason I bring that up is because a lot of the time people will trade Neo and XPEV because they move in tandem to one another. So
Right.
that's kind of an interesting consolidation, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, these Chinese names have been interesting because they've been consolidating quite longer down at these lows. There were all those fears of Chinese names getting delisted, and
Mhm.
I don't know if those fears have kind of subsided a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You know what? I don't know enough to speak on the topic. I've been told by people smarter than me that they seriously doubt that that would happen. But I agree with you that it did look that way for a little while. So I don't know. I mean, in this climate, anything can happen, but hopefully it doesn't because I enjoy trading these tickers.
Right on. If you guys are just joining us, we got about 15 minutes left. We are hanging out with Theta Warrior, and we've got a Theta Warrior coupon for anybody who does not yet have an account with us. 35% off 2 years. Talk to Sadie in the chat. She will hook you up with that coupon if you are interested in it. We're gonna keep moving here, and we're gonna check out UUUU as a uranium name, I believe.
Yeah, that one has been an interesting one. It's been a big mover. I know I've been seeing a lot of, or I saw a lot of sweeps when this thing was moving higher. So again, let's see. This is our weekly chart. Definitely got the potential for a double top here. Really just kind of stuck in this range here between $5 and really $7. Since basically February of 2021, looked like it was going to move higher, but failed to really push above it. I see pretty obvious trend line right there that we're now below. So, I think that definitely that, would strengthen the case that this may indeed be a double top, right? Um, and you could potentially look for this thing to move lower. Let's see. So the next, yeah, see, look at that. This was a big resistance level in the past. Right here, you can see failed multiple times, failed multiple times, kind of 370 and change, and eventually pushed lower. And we came back, it broke higher, and then it bounced. So that's your BRB right there. That's a beautiful buy, great spot to get involved with the stock. And you can
Yep.
see we just got a really nice move up and out of it. So again, now my thinking is that we've lost this trend line. Wouldn't it make sense for a price to retest that same level again? It's almost a given, especially with that 200 right there coming right up on it. So that, 380, $4 range, I think would be a pretty, logical target if this thing keeps moving lower. Maybe
You
there's one
got it.
above it. right
Yeah,
there at 440.
you got to assume, that's what I was going to point to. You got to assume that there's a bunch of stops at 430,
Yeah,
right? You have
yeah.
to.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
maybe they wick right through it and crank it back up. Another
Hmm.
thing, check out the high coming, or the high, like the February 21 high. You have like a double top look, right? That
Hmm.
high, and then the one in like July.
Yep,
You
you're
take
right.
out, you make a new low, and then you kind of bounce. It's almost the exact same pattern as what we're seeing here.
Very true.
So that's kind
Yeah,
of interesting too.
that's a great point. Very good point.
So maybe be on the
You know what
loop,
they say about those patterns? They have a way of repeating themselves.
right? All right, interesting. We're gonna keep on moving here. We're gonna go to LMT. I believe is Lockheed Martin.
Yep, Lockheed. Okay, so definitely will look like it was forming a symmetrical triangle, uh, bull pennant, and clearly after this week, that case has been denied. So this I had already had charted because I look at Lockheed. It's a good, defense name, to get it's a good proxy for the defense sector, I should say. So you've got a big symmetrical triangle breakout. That was a big move, kind of occurred, during the whole Ukraine Russia tension times, and pushed above this resistance level. Really, really nice consolidation. I love it when price does things like this, because to me this is like a clue, that the price is kind of taking its breath and getting ready to push higher for the next move. So when I see something like that, I get excited, and you get the breakout higher. And this rare opportunity is when I will not wait for a BRB, because you've already got a consolidation base that price is breaking out from. Now, if price had moved higher all the way and continued up higher from, this low, then I would definitely be waiting for that BRB. But when you see something like that, I think that it's okay to start getting involved. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I think as far as where this is going to pull back to, I think, well, right in there, 399, call it 400 level would make a lot of sense. If things really got nasty, of course you got the 200, but maybe even more likely it retests that, breakout from the triangle. Again, you want to just take it one level at a time. So the next spot, which is obviously not too far below 400, maybe we get a little bounce where it kind of formed the little consolidation I was just ranting about. Maybe you get a little spot there in the 380 range, but clearly this looks like it's topping out. It was unable to push higher from this consolidation. That's the true, way to look at it.
Right. Yep. Failed new highs. All
Yep.
right. Let's keep on moving here. We got, what do we got? Like 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. Let's try and jam through as many of these as we can get. We got
Cool.
IMO.
In my opinion,
Yep. Whoa.
Imperial Oil Limited. Man, so that's a pretty nice looking uptrend. I'm not going to lie.
Yes, it is.
Very, very nice. And I mean, you've definitely got a trend line there as well. It's kind of holding, riding along. Um, Very, very nice looking chart. Definitely, obviously, catching a bid from the crude oil bull run that we've seen, which has been probably one of the best plays of the year. Um, you know, when I see something like this, especially a ticker that kind of will check back often to these levels, yes, it's kind of maybe below it, maybe just above it, depending on where you draw the line. I'll give them a little bit of, reasonable doubt. Maybe this trades a little bit lower and continues higher, especially because it's come down so quickly. I think that, if prices in oil stay up, there's no reason to think this doesn't continue higher. So this is potentially a support area. Of course, you want to be careful and at least wait for it to curl up, in my opinion, before being a buyer, because this could very well lose this support level and start to sell off. But this is an interesting spot. It's right at a potential area of support. You can kind of see it did it right here. It traded below it briefly, tried to trap some bears, and then ripped. So yeah, definitely interesting.
Yeah. The thing that I see is kind of like just higher highs and higher lows. It's pretty much that simple, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's exactly the right way to look at it. It's riding right along the 50 SMA. The 50 crossed above it in 2020 and it stayed above the whole time. That is a bull trend. The SMAs are telling you that, as well as price, which you just mentioned. So definitely a great looking chart.
Yeah, nice. All right. MNST is the next one.
Okay, this has been an interesting one in terms of flow. We've definitely been seeing some interesting flow activity here. In terms of the chart analysis, pretty choppy recently. So, it was kind of holding on to this trend. You can see pretty clearly, call it right there. And we broke down below it and we failed to reclaim it right there. So potentially this is going to be a downside BRB, right? Breakdown, retest, and then break lower. That would kind of be my thinking, unless of course it is able to reclaim that trend line. But again, I mean, if depending on where you start it, we'll just throw it right there. You definitely have a potential for a rising wedge breakdown. So to me, that looks like a bearish breakdown.
Where would your initial targets be?
Um, you know, I personally, let's see, it's trading 87 and change, 83. You know, eh, I don't really like these choppy, kind of quick little ranges. I would say you could short it below today's low. Your first target would be this low right here. That's just probably a quick scalp trade. And then, of course, the bigger target would be this little bounce range right here called 82 and change. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. All right. IRM is the next one.
Oh, yeah. Iron Mountain. Okay. Let's take a look here. This is a great dividend stock. Let me just zoom out. So immediately right off the bat, I see a broadening formation. And that, I don't know, it definitely could be a topping signal. It's kind of in the lower 2/3 range of the broadening formation. Certainly somewhere in this, 41, 42 range, I think would be a likely target because it looks like it wants to test that lower spot again. But yeah, I mean, that's like pretty classic, megaphone, looks like a big megaphone, right? Type of style pattern. Let's see, I'll zoom in on the daily. Let's see. Yeah, kind of a choppy spot there. This is not a ticker that I trade personally. I know of it because it pays a good dividend. So I think, let's see. Okay, for a trade, really quickly. So you've got a gap that's about to get filled right there. If you don't see a bounce right here, which like we talked about, you want to treat that as potential support. If you don't see a bounce, you would likely expect this entire candle to be traded back out again. So if that doesn't bounce at 45 and change, you might be looking for a move towards 41 and change, which likely probably lines up with the bottom side of that megaphone.
Yep. All right, let's keep moving. Next one is X. Is this steel name?
X. Yep, definitely.
Oh,
okay, let's
kind
see.
of interesting.
Big peak there. Yeah, that's tough.
Tough.
To me, yeah, to me that looks like a fail, or not. It's not failed. It's a valid falling wedge breakout, bull flag, whatever you want to call it. It broke out, got a huge move higher, but it failed to push above these prior resistance levels.
Right.
Pulled back right from it. So it's a valid breakout, but then it gave it all back. So that's pretty bearish. I don't know that there's a really obvious trade here at this point. I think that like I said earlier, the easy short is up there when it first starts to break lower. Maybe you've got a little bear pennant, bear flag type of consolidation that formed right there. That was probably also a great short entry right there. But right now, I think on the downside, probably it's going to bounce likely on that prior swing low area. 18,
Yep.
call it.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Yeah, you can't really short it here. Not yet.
Nope.
All right, we are coming up on 7 o'clock, or rather, I guess it's 9 o'clock Eastern. Let's do one more. We got a good one to end it with, and it's XOM.
Exxon. Okay, perfect. What an incredible move Exxon has had this year.
Insane.
Absolutely amazing. Again, falls in that category: CVX, Oxy, Halliburton, Fang, Exxon Mobil. Really, just an incredible trade this year. So, to me, going back to 2019. That 66 range is where it broke down from. This was the COVID sell-off, March 2020. You've got a rising wedge that formed just below resistance, failed to push above. Then you got a nice falling wedge, which is what you want to see. And then it broke higher, and we've been on this bull run ever since. So, from 66 up to 105 and change, that's a big move. And you're also coming up on some prior peaks, where it kind of hit. Right off the bat, just like a candle analysis, that looks like a, shooting star type of thing, evening star, whatever you want to call it. Potentially, that's a bearish signal where you'd expect to pull back. And I think that that's definitely confirmed also with the candle that we're looking at currently for this current week, that big red candle there. So, it's definitely had a nice run to it. Not saying it's over, but it's definitely pulling back from the high. I think that it looked a little bit extended right there, maybe. So we're likely seeing some profit taking. In terms of where it may bounce, this was kind of the prior trend line support on the daily in that range. We're coming up on it now, called 89. It's below the prior breakout level. So I think that that would likely be the next potential area of support. And if that can't hold, again, just look left, look kind of see where it's hit prior resistance in the past, as well as prior demand. So, yeah.
Right on, Theta. Well, this has been awesome, man. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us. Where can all the people find you? I know you've got a Discord, you've got some different products that you offer, right?
Yes. So I have a public Twitter at Theta Warrior. I also have a private group, Theta Warrior Pro. That's the name of the website as well, Theta Warrior Pro. We have a great community of traders. We trade every day, and we're constantly trying to evolve and become better at our craft and make money. Right? That's the name of the game. So, yeah, I want to say thank you, Jason. You always do an excellent job with these. Thank you, everyone who tuned in and requested some tickers. I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun, and we should definitely do this again. And thank you to TrendSpider and the whole team for giving me the opportunities to do things like this.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to have you, and we will absolutely do it again. We're going to sign off tonight, guys. Thank you all for being here. We do really appreciate it. If you're interested in seeing more content like this, next Tuesday on Twitter, we're going to be doing a trading ideas space. We're going to be hosting that with Kess Investing, the Strat Soldier, Danny Naz, and Market Wizard 87. And then if you are digging these shows, we're doing another one next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be on with our good friend Mike from Market Traders TV. So if you guys are around looking for trade ideas or want to get some charts reviewed, come hang out with us. We'd love to see you there. Until next time, I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Have a great long weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Theta. Thank you again.
Cheers.